Okay. Hello and welcome to the Parsha class, Parsha Devarim 5785, and I'm your host. So we'll begin right away. I'm sorry for the delay today, and there's a lot to say. We are beginning Parsha Devarim, Sefer Devarim, new book, new Parsha. And this is Mishnah Torah, a repetition of the Torah, more or less, by Moshe. Somehow it's uniquely Moshe, and that is worth discussing. We've discussed it in previous years from different perspectives. And today, we'll have a class. Well, we'll start with that. But first, I'd like to dedicate this class for Refuah Shlema for Shmuel ben Ita Etel. So Shmuel Kamenetsky he's in the hospital, pretty gravely ill right now, at the almost at the ripe old age of 101. So God willing, he should have a recovery and be able to bring much more Torah into the world as he's been doing his entire life. All right. Let's begin at the beginning. Parsha Devarim, Perak Aleph, Pasuk Aleph says, "Ela Devarim asher diber Moshe al bnei Israel." These are the words that Moshe spoke to the Jewish people. At Al Kol Yisrael, so to all of Israel, be'ever hayarden, over the Jordan, b'midbar, in the desert, bar Rava, in the Rava, mul Suf, past past the Yam Suf, bein Paran and bein Tofel, between Paran and Tofel, Vilavan, v'Chatzero, v'Dizahav, and Lavan and Chatzero and Dizahav. The Or HaChaim, God willing, next year we'll be able to take a look as an explanation for each one of these things, that each one of these 9 places somehow teach a lesson in behavior and how best to give over Torah, which is what Moshe is doing here. But more to our question that I sort of alluded to earlier, what is it that Moshe said that was different than the rest of the Torah? So the call of the Torah of Eli Munk talks about this phrase, that should diber Moshe, that Moshe said. He says, although the structure of Deuteronomy can be readily visualized with the aid of the Vilna Gaon's insight discussed above. That's a comment he said has in the previous comment there. Discussed above, the various degrees of divine inspiration that guided Moshe in presenting these 3 addresses present some difficulty. The Talmud in Megillah 31b states that Moshe recited the passage of curses mepi atzmo, on his own, although inspired Baruch HaKodesh, by the divine spirit, as Tosfot explains there. In fact, the Talmud adds that reading of the section on curses in Deuteronomy may be interrupted, for Moshe uttered them on his own. It's not the same level as the rest of the Torah. However, nevertheless, Rambam stresses that anyone who claims that Moshe spoke even a single word of the Torah on his own is a heretic in Hilchot Teshuvah. To be sure, Moshe had reached such a high level of divine inspiration that encompassed him and enabled him to speak Hashem's words as his messenger. Rashi explains in the Gemara there in Megillah 31b. In other words, that yes, it's Moshe, and yes, it's Hashem. In other words, Hashem is speaking through Moshe. Moshe has come to the point in his prophecy where what he says is what Hashem would want him to say, without Hashem having to tell him that. So that's a highest level of prophecy. Nevertheless, Radvaz is sufficiently disturbed by the apparent conflict between the words of the Talmud and those of Rambam to conclude that the matter is ultimately beyond the realm of rational human comprehension. This conclusion is all the more understandable when one realizes that other commentators take a totally different approach to the orientation of Deuteronomy. For Ramban, Nachmanides, the book is directed at the generation about to enter Israel, and to this end, the Torah is giving them the specific guidance and precepts they would be needing. On the other hand, Rabbeinu Bachya, declares that the book is concerned with the descendants who will ultimately inhabit the land after the final redemption. Completely different ideas between student and teacher here. about who the book of Deuteronomy is geared towards. This view is able to explain the absence of any discussion of sacrifices in Deuteronomy by the fact that Jews would not have their temple in Jerusalem until many years later in Messianic times. In other words, the entire book, the whole Sefer Devarim, doesn't mention Karbanot even once. Furthermore, Rabbeinu Bachya notes that the familiar expression of Yidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, Hashem spoke to Moshe as saying, does not appear in Deuteronomy at all. That phrase, which we find missing here, speaks of God using the name Hashem, symbolically referring to his attribute of mercy. Instead, that name is combined throughout Devarim with his name of strict justice in the phrase Hashem Elokecha. Hashem is your God. This mirrors the general tone of admonition and warning to be found throughout the fifth book of the Torah. It is also worthy of note that the previous three books of the Torah begin with the letter Vav, meaning and, right? So, Ve'elu Shemot, Vayikra, right? What is it in Bamidbar? Yeah, I can't remember now. But the first words of Bamidbar, it's a whole parsha ago. It's a whole sefer ago. Right? It is also worthy of note that but Deuteronomy begins without it. Devarim, it says Elu HaDevarim, as we just read. This indicates that Deuteronomy is not tied to the past, although the past nonetheless belongs to it. Right? There's this very interesting sort of relationship in the entire book. If you follow through, there's admonition and at the same time there's compliment, and at the same time we're talking about the past. We're actually talking about the future. There's a question of which generation this is for. There's a lot to say about all of these different ideas. So let's go on a little bit further. Moshe mentions many of the faults that he sees in the Jewish people at the time. One of them is mentioned in chapter 1, verses 9 through 11. We'll go back to to verse 7 shortly. But meanwhile, it says here, "Vayomer aleichem be'et hahi lemor." I said to you at that time. This is when it was obvious that before the Torah was given, when Yitro recommended that they have multiple levels of courts, because Moshe could not deal with all of them on his own. I said to you at that time, Lemor, lo uchal levadisa etatchem. I can't deal with your problems all by myself. Excuse me. Hashem Elokechem hirbe etchem. Hinchem hayom k'chochvei hashamayim lorov. Hashem has multiplied you, and there's as many of you as there are stars in the sky. Hashem Elokei avotechem yosef alechem kachem elef pamim v'yorech etchem kasher diber lachem. Hashem should continue to bless you 1,000 times and bless you as he promised. Which brings up an interesting question brought here in the Meshech Chachma. He says, I said, I can't deal with all your burdens on my own. This is similar to kasher yesh la'adam bracha mufleget be'osher ubanim. So somebody who's very rich and wealthy and has much blessing and many children, yesh lo Torah harbe migido banav. He might have even difficulties from having so many children. Yeah, minikot v'shvachot. And that they could be overburdened. As Yomar Magdula alai Torah mikem. Why? What's the great advantage? What's so great about having so much trouble? The more I have, the more trouble I have. Yitin Hashem that Hashem gave me. Kikeini yelachem v'bnechem v'nei bnechem terchom ke'ele v'torah kazeh. Lo yufsek mikem, yusopek mikem. So the more I have, the more burden there is. Cain Moshe roa ne'aman. Moshe was the faithful servant, the faithful shepherd. Amar Hashem harbe etchem, and he said Hashem is going to increase you. K'chachovei Hashemayim, like ribu lemala mufleget ad adelo. Let's see, you're gonna have so much. Amar Shekem Yomru Roy Yisrael Manhigim Manhigehem Univiehem Tamid Alechem Tulono Ka'ela. So there's going to be future leaders and future prophets, and he's saying to them, Zesh Amar Amar Alechem Be'et Hakilemor. That's what the Meshech Chachma is most bothered by is the word lemor, to say. Because what does it say here? Let's look at the verse again. It says, lemor. He said, I said to you on that day, saying. So lemor usually means to say it's to the future. I'm saying it, so it will be said again. So to whom? Who's going to say this again? The point is, Moshe said this because knowing that the Jewish people will be blessed with greater numbers in the future, he made a bracha that the future leaders, the future prophets, that they should have nothing to complain about. It's good that there's so many. Yeah, it's good. All future prophets should say the same thing, that you're too many for me to deal with on my own. That's how much we should have. That's why it says lemor, to say shekein yomu tamid alechem. This should always be said about them. Kfi asher atem b'meitzav ha'et hazeh, just like they are at this time. Ro Yisrael Yeshayahu Yirmiyahu Ukiyotzibo. So Yeshayahu and Yirmiyahu and all the future prophets should all have that same complaint. It's a good complaint to have. It's a good problem to have. Too many children. Too many. Too many Jews. That can seem like a burden sometimes. Obviously, it takes more work. It takes more work for leaders, etc. Someone was telling me recently that they go to a shul that just sort of outgrown itself. There's too many people. But I said that's a good problem to have. A lot of us are struggling with the opposite problem. We're shrinking. It's yes, obviously it's either one is a challenge, and but it's a better challenge to have shuls that are getting stuffed. They should only continue to grow. All right, so let's go back a bit. We don't usually go out of order, but that's how I organize things today, apparently. Chapter 1, verse 7. This Moshe commands the Jewish people to get up and to go through the mountain of the Emorites. Kol Shcheinav, and to all their neighbors, Ba'arava Ha'ahar, in the Arava, and they should go up to the mountain. Uvashfela, Uvanegev, Uchofi Hayam, Eretz HaKnaini, V'halavanon, Ad Nahar Hagadol, Nahar Prat. And they should go through the Shfela, through the Negev, the desert, to the seacoast, all the way up to the land of the Knani, and the Levanon, and up to the great river, the Euphrates River. So that's how far they were commanded to go. The one group here that's not very explicit is they were supposed to go to the Emori Kol Shcheinav, to all the neighbors. What neighbors? Whose neighbors? Who are the Amorites' neighbors? So Rashi says, this is the wrong Rashi. Give me 1 second. Let's fix it. We can fix this easily enough, I think. Rashi, this is how Sefaria works. Where are we? 1:7. This should be Gimel, not Dalet, not Beis. Okay. Here we go. All right, sorry about that. Here we go. We can delete that. And nice. Okay. So Rashi says, El Kol Shchenav, all the neighbors, that's Amon and Moav, Har Seir. So that's Amon and Moav. What's why is Rashi telling us? What's did he need to tell us who the neighbors were? Well, in fact, he did. As writes Rav Chaim Kanievsky in Tama Dekra, he quotes this Rashi, Amon and Moav, Har Seir, and he says, Afal Gav de Asur Lahem Lekavsham. Even though it was usher for them, it was forbidden for them to start up with these nations, Moab and Ammon. Nevertheless, Hakavana Sha'achor Derech Medinot Elu. They still had to cross through these lands. Well, Tzarch Bir Lama in Lomar Ken. So why didn't it say that? It doesn't say, don't mess with them here. Yishlomar Kadeshi Kaimu HaMitzvah El Titagru Bam Ki Im Lo Hayu Ovdim Darkam Lo Hayashayach Bam Klal HaMitzvah Lachem. They didn't have they wouldn't have had a mitzvah at all if they didn't pass by this land so close. So they still had to pass through the land. So since Hashem commanded the Jewish people that they're not allowed to start up with these nations, they wouldn't be able to fulfill that mitzvah. That mitzvah doesn't exist unless that's shayach, unless it becomes relevant. I can't. It's not a mitzvah for me to tell somebody, don't eat pig in a place where there is no pig. It's because it's available. It's because it's a possibility. It's within the realm of reality that it becomes a mitzvah if you fulfill the mitzvah. So here too, this is the reason why the Jewish people were commanded here to go to the land of Amon and Moav, right up to it, without starting up with them, because the mitzvah of not starting up with them kicks in when they're there. Otherwise, it never kicks in. Brilliant idea, I think, from Rav Kanievsky. Zechet Tzarech Levracha. All right, so let's keep going a little bit further. This is a verse we already looked at, but it bears repeating. Hashem Elokei Avotei, it's a beautiful verse. Hashem, your God, should increase for you kahem elef pamim ve'erech etchem kasher diber lachem. You should have many more, thousands more, and they should be blessed as kasher diber lachem. As you are, as he told you, right? The weird phrase here, the phrase that commentators deal with, is it says Hashem Elokei Avatem Yosef Alechem Kachem. That one extra word has caused much ink to be spilt. Kachem means as you are. So literally, the translation is awkward. Hashem, your God, should increase to you as you are 1,000 times. Why not? You don't need that word. It would still make sense. Hashem Elokei Avotechem Yosef Alechem Elef Pamim. Hashem should increase you thousands of times. Why? As you are 10,000s of times. So there's a number of answers. I'll share with you. I'm kind of debating whether to share my own, but I might as well since I brought it up now. Kind of put myself in a corner there. But we'll start with the Bina La'itim. The Bina La'itim has an essay here, and towards the end he writes like this: Kol Yisrael shalitim b'sof le'olam ve'ad sofo, k'mo machlokot acherot, kach Yisrael ma'alot, kach Yisrael ve'in lachem cheker. Sorry, that's the wrong place. There you go. Katuv mispram achat le'achat. Ki le'inin malot atargumot amar Hashem lokechem herbe etchem hayinu she'asa etchem ribi v'arech gdulei mamala. So it would have been it's 10,000 times what? The Indian haribu b'minyan. It could have been 10,000 times, 10,000 times. Could have been infinite. That's not what the bracha is. The bracha is that they should increase, not indefinitely, not not infinitely. In other words, v'hinechem hayom k'chochvi hashamayim l'rov biur shebechalek zeh dama utam k'chochvi ha'inyan riboy l'minyan v'faleget b'mispar l'inyan hitmada amar Hashem. So regarding this verse, it basically says, "Vivarachem kasher deber lachem deu shleolam chisaron v'hachana lo Yaakov milevarech etchem b'rtzona yitbarech." So it shouldn't be some unknown, some crazy number. In other words, this is an answer that has to do with order of operations. It's 10. It's 1,000 times what you are now. That's the number. As you are now, times 1,000, not infinite thousands and thousands and thousands. He's pointing out this awkward phrasing of Moshe's bracha that the Jews should grow thousands of times. Kachem is really a mathematical explanation related to the order of operations. But I'd like to perhaps also add that perhaps we can say, similar to what the Or HaChaim says in the beginning of this parsha, on the words Be'ever HaYarden, that Moshe gave the Jewish people rebuke then, and specifically Be'ever HaYarden over the Jordan River, because they were right there. They were at the land's border. Giving rebuke from a place of success gives the rebuked party the feeling of realistic opportunity for real change. Here also, Moshe's blessing them as they are now makes them feel like that's a more achievable goal. That's actually something that can happen. You're on your way to seeing this happen, is what he's saying. I think that might be another answer for the strange word here. Okay, that's that. Just an idea. Okay, chapter 1 still, verse 17. We have a lot on chapter 1 here until we don't. So chapter 1, verse 17, we're going to try to understand a complicated Rashi. Not complicated in terms of words or anything like that, but just the idea. Rashi, commenting on the next part of the parsha, where Moshe is now being told or telling what kind of judges he's going to choose. He says, or telling the judges the rules of how to be a judge. Lo takiru panim b'mishpat. Don't give only one side when you're a judge. Don't favor any side. Kakaton kagadol tishma'un. Listen to the small and the great equally. I don't have favoritism. Lo taguru mipnei ish. And here's the weird part, the part we're going to deal with. Don't taguru, wherever that means, in front of a person. Ki hamishpat le'elokimhu. Judgment is Hashem's. V'adavar asher yikshem mikem tekrivun elai v'shamativ. And whatever is difficult for you, you can send to me and I will answer it. So in other words, even you on the Supreme Court, don't worry if something is too difficult for you. Well, worst case scenario, come to me and I'll tell you what to do. I got this, says Moshe. So there's a lot to say on this. And give me one sec. Okay. So lota guru, as we said, we play ish. Let's see if we can understand it. Should mean don't be afraid of any person. But says Rashi, davar acher, another explanation is lota guru, lo tachnis devarech mipnei ish. Don't keep in, don't hold in, don't keep yourself back from saying something that you need to say. Lashon oger bakayitz, like in the verse in Mishlei, to gather in the summer, right? So obviously this is a word, taguru, from the word agar. He says that has to do with keeping something in, gathering in. Don't gather in your thoughts. Speak your mind, Judge. You got this. Says the Gurari Maral. Just a few days ago, we had our Great Women of the Torah World presentation, and one of our great ladies in our community spoke about the Maharal's wife, Peril, who was apparently quite an important part of the Maharal's writings. She edited some of his works, corrected some of his works. Quite a Talmidah Chachama in her own right. Either way, so the Maharal here explains Rashi like this. So the Maharal is more involved with the last part of the verse of this of this verse, right? Im lokain. So Aldavar Zen is Telek. Where's this? Where is this? Ah, yeah. So it says, "How you miktar hadavar akasha tavuli?" Bring the difficult questions to me. Says the Maharal writes, "Diktiv kara b'parshat Yitro." Who says in Parshat Yitro, "Hadavar akasha yeviyun el Moshe," should be brought to Moshe. That's why he said that. The Eitzel ben Adam adif lashon haba, the Tishuhu dayan. Meviyin hamishpat alav legamri. The judgment ends up being decided by me. The ilu klape hakadosh baruch hu adif lashon hakrava. It makes sense with regard to Hashem that such a word should be used. The bringing should be brought to Hashem. How can Moshe, such a humble person, Anav Mikol Adam, how could he be using a phrase like that? Bring me the questions you have. The Fisheim Evayin al Hakadosh Baruch Hu Gamri Shein Basar V'Dam Baal of Lagamri. A person can't know the entire, can't know everything. Ela, as opposed to Hashem, who does. Ela Shemikrivin Lefanav Hamishpat. Lakach Kasav Takrivin Alai. That's why Moshe said, "Bring it to me." Lomar the Mash Namar, as it says, "V'Yakriv Moshe at Mishpatan Lifnei Hashem." Moshe brings the questions to Hashem. Zeh Hayem Mipnei She'amar Moshe Lahakriv Lo B'Mishpatim. He's gonna decide it, not because he knows it, not because he's such a genius, but because he has access to Hashem. He has access to the source. The Tichaktiv Eitzel Moshe Hakrava. Only regarding Moshe can he use a phrase like "bring it." Now, bring me the case. Afal Gav the Adif Lishna Haba the Hava. Right. The idea again being that he didn't say Taviun, bring it to me. He said Takrivun because it shows that Hashem is involved. It's not Moshe as the final last word in what the halacha is. It's Moshe is going to consult with Hashem, and we'll find out what the right thing to do is. All right. Siftei Chachamim, though, deals with that other issue that we talked about before. Siftei Chachamim, yeah. Yeah. So he deals with another concept. Mishum shahaya al davar nistaleg mimenu mishpat. So that so we don't a moment. So Rashi says else. Rashi says here. Didn't bring the source for some reason. That it should be the law should be brought to him so he can ask Hashem what to do, as we just said. And he says because he's going to ask Hashem. The Ktiv kiba mishpat l'elokim. Hashem is the judgment. Ktiv acharav v'adavar asher yikshem mikem takrivun elai. Whatever is difficult, bring to me. So which is it? It's Hashem's is the judgment, or whatever is difficult, bring to you. So a similar answer says kaviyachol shehu atzmo elokim. It's almost like he himself is God. God forbid. That's not what he's saying. The kach nela memenu din Yerusha. He like with regard to the law of inheritance, the davar pashad hu so adam yodea im ein leish banim the habat yeresh b'makom ben. So Moshe made 3 errors in judgment in the time that he was the leader of the Jewish people. The 3 times that Moshe didn't know what the law was. And one of them was with regard to female inheritance. It's the very, very end of Parshat of Sefer Bamidbar. In basically the last 3 parshot, there's a little mention here and there of the 5 daughters of Tzlafchad, and Moshe did not know what the law was, but so Rashi brings. I should probably have the Rashi here. It would be wise. Let's see if I can find it quickly enough. Sorry. Should not take too long. Ooh. All right, we talked about that. That's a guru. Ish, right? Here. Yeah, there we go. So let's look at this Rashi. It's kind of an important part here. Right? There we go. Because of this phrase, because he said, bring the case to me, that's why he made the mistake in the case of Benot Slavchad. But he made other mistakes, says Siftei Chachamim. There are other times when he didn't know what the law was. Like I said, 2 other times at least. Right? So why is he using this as the example? This is the example because it's a davar pashahu. It's simple, it's obvious. Who else is going to inherit the land? Tzlafchad's daughters don't have a brother. He's not there. Is the land going to just disappear? We're going to give the land to somebody else, Joe Schmo? First come, first serve. What are the other options? Of course, it's going to have to go to the family somehow. So it was a much more simple, obvious case, at least from the Jewish perspective. I believe Jews, if I'm not mistaken, Jewish law is the first to have female inheritance or female ownership of things. If I'm not mistaken, the call Adam Yodea im ein leish banim Bad Yoresh b'makom ben. The ha amra Rachel v'Leah. Even Rachel and Leah said this. Ha'od lanu chelek. They asked, did our father leave us anything? He should, as implying that he should have, right? Pirshu klum anu notlim chelek Yerusha ben hazkarin. They should have received something, but they didn't. So Rashi is bringing up this particular case because this is where Moshe is the most embarrassed, because it is the most obvious what should have been done in that case. Okay, last two pieces here. One, the last thing we'll say on this chapter 1, verse 22. And Moshe talks about the events that led up to the first Tisha B'Av, that the Jewish people sent spies to the land and believed the spies against H-Shem, that the land needed, the land was not going to be able to be conquered by them. So the order of events of how that happened are explained differently here than elsewhere, like when it actually happened. And so it's worthy of some commentary. Tikavun alai kulchem, you all came to me together. Send men in front of us. They should scout out the land. And they should tell us how, at the derech, the road that we should take. Asher na'alabav, at the arim, asher navo alehem. To tell us about the cities that we're going to go to. Tell us about it. Tell us what we're going to see over there. Right? Perfectly normal, natural scouting expedition. So Rashi says, on the phrase "Tikruvun alai," that you came to me at that time, kulchem, together. That's an interesting word, kulchem, all together now. Ba'arbuvia, in a mixture, and we've spoken about this in previous years in different perspectives. But that's the problem, is that Lan hu Omer Tikavun alai al Rashi shiftechem v'ziknechem etamru hein haranu v'gomer. Later on, when they came to get the Torah, right? When in Har Sinai, that's when they came they came properly with the heads of the nation, and then the elders, etc. Right? They went in the right order. They didn't come in one big mass. That seems to be the problem. But here they went, Yaladim, Mechabdim et Zakenim, Shalchum Lifnehem. When it comes to getting the Torah, they came out. They came properly with the younger behind, pushing up the back, pushing the elders in front. Zakenim Mechabdim et Harishayim Aleched Lifnehem. The elders were giving kavod, giving honor to the leaders of Al-Khan. Tikruven alei kulchem bir buvia. Here you came all at once, one big mass. Yeladim dovchin et hazakenim. The younger, beating out, racing the elders. Zakenim dovchin et harashim, and the elders pushing aside the leaders. So this is a quote from the Midrash Sifrei. Says the Kli Yakar. So it's a long piece. We're not going to read it inside the whole piece, but just get an idea here. He quotes Rashi that it's in the Urbuvia, etc. And then Rashi compares this to what? The events of the giving of the Torah, the Matan Torah, at Har Sinai. That they went there, Kuhugan, as they should have. Lama lo hiskir achshav kariud shel Matan Torah. The Kli Yakar wants to know, why does Rashi, why does the Midrash toss in here this comparison of to the Matan Torah? What does the Matan Torah have to do with this? So el lefisha kol zeh le'inyan hatochacha. Even that is a tochacha. Even that is a rebuke. Why? Lo markiata, now ani ma'ashim etchem al hakriva shel matan Torah. Now I understand how it is that you came to me when you came to get the Torah. Kach amar lahem b'matan Torah, the nati etchem lekav zchut. I judged you favorably. Kishariti yaladim mechabdim et zakenim shalchim ufnehem amar. I thought you were doing everything right when you came to get the Torah, but now I know the real you, and that changes everything. By shluach hameraglim b'atem b'buvia. Now that you came in this mixture, what do I see? You let him dovchim et zakenim. You, the young people, push aside the elders. They don't really have respect. They never really did. So why is it that you seem to give respect when it came to giving the Torah? It's not because you really respected your elders. You really respected the proper order, the hierarchy of the respect you should give other people. What was really happening? Adarabba, he raya shekol chavtzeichem kinyane haguf aval kinyan Torah rechok mikuliyat techem. It's all a proof that the other way around, that really all you care about is your own bodies and your own personal wants and desires. And when it comes to the Torah, al kain shalchu hayaladim azakenim lifnechem. The young people pushed the elders in front of them. They said, "Lomar atem kodmim lekabel." You get the Torah first. The Torah is for old people. The Torah is for you guys. You don't have, you're ki b'yishashim b'chachma. You have a lot of, you're the wise ones. You take the Torah. V'nachnu acharonim ki ein haTorah neuta lanu ki amartem acher shekol zaken kvar kacha chom hatabai shelo. You guys don't have your heat anymore. You're not energetic. You're not going to do any sins. So you guys take the Torah, you elders. We'll take it. We'll get it eventually. When we get old, we'll keep the Torah. Yeah. So in our youth, we'll sow our wild oats or whatever whatever the phrase is. And then when we get older, then we'll take the Torah. That's why you were showing so much respect when you got the Torah. It wasn't because you cared about the elders. It's because you didn't want the Torah. Not much has changed in that regard. We're still in some ways like that, unfortunately. Probably the greatest loss of Jews lately is not to anti-Semitism or Holocausts or anything else, but it's to the opposite. We're just losing them. They just they leave for nothing, for their own pleasures. Yeah. Deserves a kina. Anyway, the things have not changed much between now and the Kli Yakar's time, unfortunately. Yeah. Okay. Last piece for tonight. Chapter 3, verse 3. We have continuation of the history of the Jewish people on the way to Eretz Yisrael, bless you. And that's V'yiten Hashem Elokeinu b'yadeinu gam et Og melech haBashan. Hashem delivered Og into our hands. He was the king of the Bashan. Et kol Amon, all of his nation. V'nakehu ad bilti hishir lo sarid. And we defeated them in such a way that nobody survived. Yep. Okay. So writes the Tam V'dat. He quotes a Midrash. Midrash Rabbah, at the end of 21 there, Sof Simon 21, it says, Ita Og Haya Tolesh Har Zorek Al Yisrael Moshe Haya Notzel Tzaru Maskir Alav Sham Shema Mefurash V'Sumcho. So there's a whole story there. In this battle between Og and the Jewish people, the Og took a mountain, he threw it at the Jews. Moshe said Hashem's holy name, and the mountain was suspended. Yisrael Omim Arorot Hayedim Shekach Zorkot, and then Yisrael said, "Cursed be the hands that threw this." Omrim, the Emorites, Omrim, Bruchot Hayidayim Shekach Sumchot. Blessed are the hands that did this. So they copied our bracha. They're very happy, the Emorim, that Moshe suspended the mountain and the Jews were not killed by Og. And this has to be a question, because remember, the Emorites should not have been happy that the Jews were heading towards their land. Tamu ma'od, shayu Emorim mishvachim et Yisrael. Why would they praise the Jewish people? Umovachim et yidei Moshe, and thank and bless the hands of Moshe. They were enemies of the Jews. Says the Tam V'Das, says Rabbi Moshe Sternbach. Achein Emorayim lamdu b'masa zeh shel Moshe otzem tzidkato v'gudal ahavat habriot shefayima b'kirbo. They saw from here how much the Jewish people love and care for other creations. What? Where? Ki lenochach as achzarioto shel Og malkam mevakesh la'akor et Yisrael ashmidam b'zrika achat. Moshe Og tried to kill the Jewish people with this one throwing of a mountain. Hayazel mafli ech Moshe b'kocho gadol lo madad lahem k'midatam l'zrok hahar alehem. And what did Moshe do with his magic, quote unquote, holy power? He didn't throw the mountain back at them. He suspended it. He suspended it. Ki im samoch et ahar. He suspended the mountain in midair. Ve'atzar bo melipol al Yisrael. And that, from there you see the real greatness of Yisrael. Lamdacha she'ein Yisrael kishar ha'umot. We're not like the other nations. She'ein rachamim bilavam. And they have no rachamim in their hearts. B'malchamam yashchitu et darkam. They try to kill, they try to maim, they try to inflict as much damage as possible. V'anu, and this is we see this is a very relevant piece to learn, especially during the 9 days leading up to Tisha B'Av, when we remember the terrible things that other nations have done. We don't do that. Anu ein lanu ela ma shnitz tavinu bo. We can only do what we're told to do. Lezeh berchu ha'amorim et yadav shel Moshe, and this is why the Emorites blessed Moshe's hand. Shelo hayu zorkot ela sumkot. He didn't throw it. He didn't throw the mountain. He suspended the mountain, because when you can be a rachamim, you should be a rachamim, and that is the Jewish way of war. That despite Geneva Conventions and the standards of other people and the casualties of war being what they are, the Jewish way of war is to always try to find a way to alleviate the suffering of innocents and to only do what we have to do to protect ourselves and to enhance and to better the world from this point on and forever. Again, this should be a refuah shlema for Shmuel ben Ita Eto, of Shmuel Kamenetsky. Should have a refuah shlema b'karov, and we should only hear good things for all of Klal Yisrael. Thank you, and have a great night. Great rest of your week.